republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. This is our first meeting in which we are seeking any public comment on any of the issues on our agenda today. Mr. Fields, has anyone requested to speak?
There have been no requests.
Is anyone in the audience wishing to speak on any of the agenda items for today? All right. Mr. Fields has circulated for approval our minutes from our meeting last month. Has the commission had an opportunity to review?
We have.
Is there a motion regarding approval?
Move to approve the minutes of June 22nd, 2023.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, we have a update on the Transportation Licensing Commission legislative recommendations to the Metro Council.
Mr. Chairman, Director of NDOT, Diana Alicon is here to report back and share information.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I wanted to give you an update with where we are with the legislation. Currently, the item has been deferred for a couple meetings. There was an amendment that was actually filed, two amendments that were filed. Both legal and NDOT had shared with the council member that had filed it that it was a problematic legislation. Mainly NDOT felt like the way the legislation was written, it would require that if we were to consider a reduction in the numbers, we would only be able to reduce the ETVs. We would not be touching any of the sightseeing, and that we felt was very problematic. So there was a public meeting that was held. One of the council members actually held a public meeting. NDOT participated in it as well as legal. And at that time, we had a chance to hear from both sides of the community about some of the concerns, including the amendments that were being filed. And then at that time, that council member made a decision to defer the item for a couple meetings. So this item will be coming back up. I have a follow-up meeting with the council member to talk through about their amendment and potential changes to the amendment. And then this item would actually then possibly come back and move forward. So I just wanted to give you an update and let you know what was happening with it. So it's still just at first reading has been passed. And so second reading is where you file your amendments. And but it got deferred at second reading, so we're still just past first reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have a few public hearings. The first, we are considering a booting services application for No-Go Parking Management Group, LLC. Mr. Fields.
The Metropolitan Code of Law in 681 requires that any company that wants to participate in the booting and mobile or automobile immobilization has to appear in a public hearing for the commission. We have collected the information that's required by the ordinance, and they're present if you have any questions, but their application is in order.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak regarding No-Go Parking Management's application for to provide booting services? Hello.
Hello, good afternoon.
If you'll please introduce yourself. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So here at No-Go, we saw an opportunity for a way to provide more strict adherence to parking management, right? We went to a lot of different apartment complexes, a lot of different commercial properties, and everybody said the same thing. We have an issue with parking, and we need a way to ensure that people who do need access or who are paying customers or paying residents we need a way for them to be able to access parking without having to, park, way on the other side of the lot or find street parking for something that they feel that they are, and in theory, they are entitled to having parking. So we just want to provide a way to add additional safety measures and safety measures and ways for these properties to properly enforce their parking outside of just providing tickets, so that people who are supposed to have access to that parking do have access to it.
Thank you. Any questions?
Looking at your application, are there 4 locations that you intend to be operating?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Could you explain how you're going to be operating this?
Yes, so it's kind of two fairly similar or separate approaches depending on the type of entity. So for residential entities, we'll be working with their leasing department to obtain a list of individuals who are supposed to be registered and residents within that. And then for those who don't have that list, working with them to get that in accordance, and then having them set up the system to do so. And so we're also working with another vendor, Park Ease, in order to get those set up. And so for the residential side of things, we have people who will be patrolling these properties and checking with the internal system to see, for these cars that we're seeing, are they supposed to be on the property? So they'll be leveraging different technologies depending on what capabilities the property has, whether that be leveraging a mobile app that can scan the license plates, or leveraging in certain scenarios license plate recognition cameras that can plug into the software and then properly identify those who are not permitted to park on that property. And then for the commercial side of things, a fairly similar approach, except that instead of leveraging the internal database of residents, we will be leveraging the internal list of individuals who have paid to park for that location.
And how will you handle if someone is in violation?
Yeah, so if someone's in violation, then we'll indicate that in our system, and then a member of our staff will go out there. They'll already be out there, but a member of our staff who's out there on site will place a boot on their vehicle, 2 boots per vehicle, and then that individual will have a sticker placed on their vehicle that can be easily removed so it doesn't damage their vehicle. And then so they would scan the QR code or call the phone number that's on that, and then they'll get a hold of a member of our team who will then dispatch somebody out to remove the boot, and then they have the choice to either pay it online before the individual gets there, or even when the individual gets there, or they can pay in person when the individual gets there, whether they're paying by card or cash. And so.
Are you going to have a charge for the boot?
Yes.
And that's going to be set at what? Have y'all made that decision yet?
Yes, so it'll be set at $75.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
What do you anticipate your response time when someone arrives and sees that sticker on their car and they either do the QR or they call 1-888?
Yeah, so we anticipate the response time to be well under an hour. Obviously it's going to depend on a variety of different factors. If there's, some crazy event downtown, then that may impact response times a little bit. But the way we plan to staff each of the locations is well under an hour. An hour is the absolute max that we would have somebody come in and remove something. But ideally, roughly about 20 to 30 minutes. So.
Mr. Fields, do I remember correctly, we set the fine that can be, or the fee that can be charged for booting, correct?
Correct. Metro Council made the change to allow you to do that.
An hour seems like a long time to wait for someone to come and take the boots off my vehicle.
Yeah, sorry. That's like I said, it's just in extreme situations where, it's something that's out of control. For example, if we boot somebody who is downtown and then we have, some major event or some major concert, that may delay things. But on average, roughly about 20 to 30 minutes at most, assuming that, weather permits and there's nothing extraneous. Thank you. So, but typically we'll have somebody on site regardless though. So in the instance that somebody is not on site, then that's where the 20 to 30 minutes comes
Where are the locations you plan to operate initially?
Yeah, so the first location will be Camden Music Row, just on the Membrane. And then the second location, I'm blanking on the names, but
Okay. Number 10. Camden and the Havana and Lexington, Havana, Lexington, Old Hickory Boulevard.
All of their locations will be inspected prior to their starting service. We'll check to make sure the signs are all in the right spot,
yes, sir.
and the list will stay on file in the office.
How do you handle overnight calls? 3 in the morning, my car is booted.
Yeah, we're providing 24/7 coverage. So if the person calls 3 in the afternoon or 3 in the morning, they're still entitled to that quick response. So we'll have people on standby at all given point in time. And so if somebody calls in, they'll the way our phone tree set up is that it'll ping all staff. And so it'll ping both staff who are scheduled to have coverage as well as staff who aren't scheduled to have coverage. So if there's ever a situation where things happen, right? And so if something happens to the person who's scheduled, they're not kind of left hanging if they need somebody to step in. Every person on the team will have access to that call, and they can take that and then handle the situation from there.
And it's 3 staff members today, but you intend to grow?
Yes,
Yeah. Has anybody on the team previously worked for a booting company?
not previously.
Parking management company, apartment management company?
Valet services, but not officially parking management. No.
PMC, Town Park?
Town Park and Ameripark. Park.
Any further questions?
This is just curiosity. Say the license is approved, he could, or the company could expand to service 50 or 100 properties once that starts, based on demand, obviously. And there are restrictions relative to, in the state of Tennessee, who can invest in or have ownership in a property owner or parking management company cannot have investment in a booting or a towing company.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, everyone.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this issue? We'll close the public meeting at this time. Well, Mr. Fields had indicated prior to Mr. Orgy speaking that the application was in order.
I'm also encouraged to see 3 individuals under the age of 30 starting a business here in Nashville, and that they are all residents of Davidson County. It's nice to see some growth in this direction in our community. Well, I'll make a motion to approve the application of Go Parking Management Group LLC for booting services.
No go.
I'm sorry, no go. Excuse me.
Any discussion further on the issue? There's been a second by Mr. Rogers. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have a public hearing for reviewing a proposal to set fees for emergency towing services for removal of abandoned vehicles from the right-of-way. Mr. Fields?
As you know, the Metro Council has given the authority to the commission for the establishing of any towing fees. In this particular case, This particular towing fee, we're recommending that it would be $225, which is the fee that's already been established for wrecked vehicles. What this would do would give the emergency companies a baseline that if the police department or NDOT were to call for a vehicle that is abandoned on the public right-of-way, that they would have a baseline for it. Many of the vehicles that are on the public right-of-way are inoperable in many cases, so we also added language that if it requires additional fees or additional pieces of equipment, they would be able to charge for them, which is very different than a regular car, which we do not allow any additional because it typically doesn't require that. So again, there's been a great need, and NDOT has stepped up to accept the challenge of helping clear the public right-of-way. And here I go. Anyway, we have stepped up to be able to work with the police to help keep the public right-of-way clear and safe.
All right, is there anyone who would like to speak from the audience on the issue of modifying our rules and procedures to give some clarity on what emergency towing services can charge for the removal of abandoned vehicles from the public right-of-way? At this point in time, we'll close the public hearing. So, Mr. Fields, in our materials circulated prior to the meeting, there's the proposed rules and procedures are in red.
Yes. I'd be happy to read that for you. It would be number 3 of section 326 of your rules and procedures. Towing of abandoned vehicles, trailers, containers, or other miscellaneous pieces of equipment from the public right-of-way, fee is $225. There's a note, if additional equipment or services must be used for the removal from the public right-of-way, reasonable charges for the use of these may be applied regardless of whether they are set forth herein. But there is in the remainder of the rule, there's actually a schedule for typical charges for various pieces of equipment and or devices to be used.
Mr. Fields, the agenda says it's a review of the proposal to set the fees. What do you need from the commission today?
The commission would actually have to approve in a public hearing in addition to the rule. So this would be a staff recommendation.
Would anyone like to make a motion regarding approval or disapproval of the staff recommendation to modify section 326 of our rules and procedures?
Sure, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the staff recommendation of the modification of section 326 to rules and procedures.
Second that motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next, we have another public hearing. We've been asked to review proposed TLC rule, which defines special purpose vehicle under other passenger vehicles for hire. Mr. Fields.
In Chapter 6.74 of the Metropolitan Code of Law, which covers other passenger vehicles for hire, there are 4 different categories. There's a category for sedans, there's a category for shuttles, there's a category for limousines, there's a category for special purpose vehicles. The definition and the defining points on a special purpose vehicle is more of a part that would describe what it's not. It does not specifically say what it is. Therefore, over the years, the commission, if we had an application, you're basically having to work through each one saying, is this appropriate? At the present time, there are no special purpose vehicles that are licensed. The purpose of 674, as it was drafted by the council and the rules that you've had over the years, it's primary transportation. There could be some entertainment involved because a limousine or something like that, but its primary purpose of transportation. What we think this does, it makes it very clear that any vehicle licensed under 674 is transportation, and it is not entertainment. And since we have section 6.77 of the code that is entertainment, that any vehicle that would qualify prior, that could have been a special purpose vehicle, would have to apply under the 677, which is the entertainment transportation. So this basically cleans it up to make sure that 674 is focused on transportation rather than entertainment as its primary function.
Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this issue? At this point in time, we'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Fields, has Metro Legal had an opportunity to look at this proposed change to Rule 502?
I'll let Metro Legal speak.
Yes, we have.
Any input?
We're okay with this revision for now, but probably we'll look to amend the code in the new council term.
And I apologize for not adding that in the conversation that we had with Metro Legal. But, you know, while this is adequate to get us where we need to be, they would recommend that in a new term of the council, we very likely introduce it as a bill to change 674. And assuming that you approve it today, we would take that as your permission to go forward with it in the future to amend the code in 674 to better define what a special purpose vehicle is.
And quick question for Mr. Fields. So this would be, we could use this change to the rules and procedures as guidance for new license requests or renewals, right? There's no, I guess, sort of implementation on existing license holders.
Yeah, this wouldn't affect, anything that's in effect would, if there happens to be one that's out there that is not in a proper record place, it would be obviously be able to stay there. But in the future, any vehicle that they applied in this particular part of 674 would have to meet these criteria.
Is there a type of vehicle you think might apply under this?
And I think you've seen this. There are vehicles that could be, again, thinking of a vehicle that is would carry 14 passengers plus a driver, making 15. That might be an open vehicle that would be under 10,000 pounds. Something that weighs 9,999 pounds could qualify. We've actually had some vehicles like that. We currently don't have any vehicles that would meet that. Again, I think part of this, since the council by their ordinance and you by your rules have adopted 677, we think it makes sense. And in this last licensing period, you made it clear that if it's entertainment, it needs to go to that section rather than 674. So this is a staff response to your actions back in April. And if you'll recall, I said we would come. I pledged to come back in the July meeting to share some staff thoughts. And again, a lot of research and lots of effort by Metro Legal to get it to this point. For instance, and I will add one thing, at the present time, there's no specific language that would say they couldn't pull something. Now, no one's brought that in. We've had some ideas, but none have ever actually applied. This would say, no, this is not for pulling anything. This is a vehicle. It's not pulling a wagon, a cart, a tram, or anything else.
Maybe this was asked and I missed it. Have we had any in the past that would have fit this?
I was not present at the time, but there was a time period where the duck tours were operating. It's possible that I wasn't a part of that. It's possible that the duck tour could have been something that would fit into this category. I don't know if it's weight classification, but I assume it was relatively light since they were trying to make sure it would float. We have had requests for trams that have never come to fruition. There would be an electric vehicle that would pull trams. very much like you would see at Disney World or the old Opryland trams for the older folks that used to work out there when we were kids.
And that'd be street legal? Just trying to think.
They actually are created to be street legal. We'd have to really look at that if we were gonna consider it. I wonder if an autonomous bus or something would fall in under this. If we were to do a pilot autonomous bus, would it fall in under this particular category?
As long as it were carrying passengers, in other words, if its purpose was passengers, for instance, if it were a shuttle of sorts, you know, which is certainly something that's being looked at. I know out in Scottsdale and you know that better than I. Yeah, I think I think you could probably get it in, but it would not be under a special purpose necessarily. But even if it was, I don't know that this would preclude it because it would be more of the structure of the vehicle. If it were a closed vehicle, and I'm assuming it would be, I think we could probably classify it as special. There could be a staff recommendation to the commission to make a decision.
I'm sorry, I'm just muttering over here about autonomous vehicles. That's not close down the road, is it?
Yeah. You know, I would share, if you were to go, and I believe when Mr. Schlafer and I were at the International Association of Transportation Regulators last fall, one of their primary focuses was driverless vehicles. At the conference this year, which is in Arizona, that is going to be the primary focus of the entire conference, of vehicles like this that would run routes. And again, I'm certainly not an expert, and I defer to the director of NDOT if she'd like to speak to it about but the technology it's an amazing technology.
You're right, it is pretty amazing technology. We are looking at a particular pilot that would run on a specific route, so it's not like it would be able to go all over the place. It'd be a set route that it would run on. The vehicle we're looking to use could carry at the maximum 15 people, so it's not used to move many people, but the idea is those smaller routes that we want to connect something from A to B, there'll be an opportunity to do it through this, and it would be a pilot that we would start with before we would move forward.
So would it be privately owned or Metro operated?
It would be privately operated Metro contracting.
Okay, but it would still need to be licensed by this commission?
I believe it should be. That's why I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I should have asked first before I asked my question, but I just got into it, so my apologies. But I do believe it would need to come before this commission because it doesn't qualify quite as a bus. It would be more as a transportation service, and it would need to come before this commission. And I would look favorably for your vote.
No promise.
I've been hearing a lot of that recently about looking favorable for your vote. Mr. Fields, if I could just ask, this proposed change to Section 502, what is the reason that the staff is recommending we do this?
Again, I think most of it is making it a clear delineation between what an entertainment transportation vehicle is and what a transportation vehicle is. When 674 was written and passed back in 2004 or 5, as it was going through that process, it was clear they were trying to address the idea at the time of shuttles and limousines. Since then, the whole concept of sedans and SUVs that were typically not operating at the time have come along. So now we have a great deal, as you know, a great deal of transportation being provided by OPVHs. Uber Black, which is a licensed, requires local licensure. What we want to make sure is that we classify as close to, as correctly as we can. if it's entertainment, and again, through the last 2 years, you've had long debates about what is entertainment and what is not entertainment. And of course, the legislature had some of the same things. And there were places where there are some vehicles that could qualify under this and provide basically the same style of entertainment transportation as an ET because they're smaller and weigh less. So if they carry fewer passengers, then technically they would qualify. By the same token, under 677, it says if you carry as many as one passenger and you're doing entertainment, you should be classified as an ET. So the council actually anticipated, I think, that if it's entertainment, it needs to be under 677, and I think this responds to that as well.
Seems like we'd also give notice to people who are applying as to what a special purpose vehicle really is.
Correct.
The criteria. Okay.
It would be on the front end that they would have to meet that criteria before we could even entertain the application, or we would defer them to an ET process.
I'd make a motion to approve proposed change to Section 502 Transportation Licensing Commission Rules and Procedures to regarding the definition of a special purpose vehicle.
I'll second.
Aye. Motion passes. Next, we have several items to be considered for consent. First is other passenger vehicles for hire. There's several changes to OPVH certificates. Mr. Fields?
Carroll Transportation Services asked to change their name to Ride with a GI from its current name, and their request is in order and approvable if you choose.
What is the GI standing for?
Well, we don't have to question that. I'm assuming that he is a veteran that has decided that rather than use his name, he would use he would prefer to call his company that.
Well, I asked that because it does have the appearance of being a veteran-owned business, and I was hoping to be sure that they actually have a veteran owning the business. So.
I don't have his DD 214 present, but I could certainly inquire of it.
Mr. McNally, are you wanting to defer Carroll Transportation so you can find out that information?
How urgent is the name change, Mr. Fields?
Well, clearly he would still be able to operate because he has a current permit. So it would just be a matter of inquiring and bringing it back to you, or if you chose inquiring and if it met your criteria of, if you know, you approved it pending that it actually is not false advertising, that is a veteran or a veteran company of sorts, then we could certainly go forward with it if it met your criteria, or we could bring it back to the August meeting. It won't stop from working.
Well, I rarely challenge name changes for companies, but if there's any risk that there might be a misrepresentation, I would like to defer to ascertain what the GI stands for, and if it is supposed to be meaning a veteran, then I'd like to verify that it is a member-owned veteran by a veteran.
All right. Well, with your permission, I'll withdraw it from the agenda and bring it back to you at the August meeting with additional information.
Well, I want to make sure the other commissioners are in
Well, I mean, if
agreement
the
with it,
commissioners do that.
Do we need to vote to defer, or is that something I can just say we'll defer until next
Yeah,
month?
it can, I don't know that a deferral would require you to remove it since, again, y'all have given me the authority to add to the agenda, and that also means take away from the agenda, so.
Well, does anybody object to deferring it?
No concerns from me.
We'll just do that.
Mr. Rogers?
No, that's fine.
All right, we will defer Carroll Transportation Services' request to approve a name change to Ride with the GI to our next meeting. Next, on the consent agenda, we have a number of new company applications, Mr. Fields, for other passenger vehicle for hire companies.
The following companies have applied to operate as a other passenger vehicle for hire under 6.74 of the Metropolitan Code. Area Limo LLC, Franklin Area Ride Service, Hope Transportation, Hussein Transportation LLC, Jimmy's Limo and Transport Services, JTB Uber B LLC, Kilab Limo Service, MDRJ LLC, Nash Pink Ride, Sundown Limousine Service, Warsama Transportation, Williams Prestige Transportation, Zero Limo Services LLC. The applications are in front of you and in order.
I believe I counted 13 applications, and I would make a motion that we approve the applications for the new companies named by Mr. Fields just a moment ago.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item is under Wrecker and Towing Services. We have company applications for D&D Towing and Dave's Towing. Mr. Fields?
As you know, under 6.80, the commission has the authority to approve record companies. These are companies that have applied. Their applications are in order.
Make a motion to approve the Wrecker and Towing Services applications for D&D Towing and Dave's Towing.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Also on the agenda today, we have under Entertainment Transportation, a driver application review for Ashley Nicole Thomason. Mr. Fields?
In making her application, she, as you can see on the face of the application, she indicated there were zero charges, convictions, forfeits of bond, and so forth. And when we had her, after her background check, it doesn't appear, there was record that she had conviction dating back to 2003.
Ms. Thomason, are you present?
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So your 2003 conviction, what was that for?
In 2003, I was working at a grocery store, and I was a cashier. I had ended up giving some free food away. I was convicted and charged, did my time.
And why didn't you list that on your application?
Because it says, when I called the county, it said that it was expunged, supposed to be. And I didn't read that it said even listed expungements.
All right. On the application in bold, on the second page, it says list each law violation of a federal, state, or local law with which you have ever been charged or arrested, whether convicted or not, including expungements. That's what you didn't read?
Yeah, I just kind of skimmed over it. It was quick.
The form also says that failure to make a full disclosure as to all arrests and convictions will result in the denial of this application for a permit, and a new application must be reviewed by the TLC. So we've not denied the application yet. That's what this meeting is for, Ms. Thomason. I don't have any further questions right now.
I have a couple questions.
Yes, sir.
You said that the actions that you did that led to the charges was giving away some free food at a supermarket.
Yes, sir.
You were charged with theft over $1,000.
Yes, sir.
At the time, wasn't that a felony?
Yes, sir.
All right. And it appears that it was resolved in General Sessions Court in Cheatham County, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So it must have been reduced down to a misdemeanor.
Not 100%, I guess.
Okay. Theft over $1,000 would be a lot of food.
So there were several people that had gotten in trouble, and they fined us all the same thing.
So you were one of several people that were charged?
Yes.
Okay. Was the food, I'm just trying to understand the actual nature of the acts that led to the charges. Were people taking large quantities of food out the back door of the store, or was it something over the front of the counter?
I'm not sure. I just know what I did.
What'd you do?
A lady came in who was supposed to, her stuff rang up $70. She only had $40. She had several kids with her, and I felt bad for her. Biggest mistake ever. I took her $40 and gave her the rest of the food and just stuck it in the cash register.
So your harm to the business was about $30 then?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you have to make restitution as part of your probation?
I had to do, I had to pay $2,400 back and do a year's of unsupervised probation and graduate high school.
You were on probation for 8 years?
No, for a year.
A year. Okay, I'm sorry, I wasn't listening carefully. Thank you. All right. Thank you for answering my questions.
Yes, sir.
Any further questions for Ms. Thomason?
Just one question, that you've seen the application now and you understand that, going forward when it says that, you should list expungements, that you should list this, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
I think we should also note that I believe a representative from Honky Tonk Express is here on behalf of Ms. Thompson.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. What's his name?
Grant.
Okay. I appreciate you being here. I make a motion to approve Ms. Thomason's application despite her failure to report a 20-year-old misdemeanor theft conviction. I think she's sincere, and I am also going with the presumption that you are telling us the truth about what you did was kind of an act of kindness rather than intention to harm the company.
Yes, sir.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Thompson. I believe that concludes our agenda. Mr. Fields, is there any other business?
Have no other business to present to you today.
Motion to adjourn. With enthusiasm.
Motion passes. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.